definitely moving a lot more equipment right now towards that front line, and it really is something, Frederica, that we have been seeing throughout the course of this entire day. As we are in the town of Belgorod, which is really one of their main places where they've set up these garrisons and have a large troop concentration from which they keep feeding that front line down in Kharkiv, which as you've noted, the U.S. says is right now one of the sort of main battlefields, Frederica.
And so, Fred, for now, it appears, just as we were watching with you, these armored vehicles here at nightfall. We've been watching you for days now in that general region. In daylight, I recall one of your live shots where a number of Russian vehicles were making its way across the border toward Ukraine. Is it your estimation that perhaps there's an increase of that kind of activity now that it's nightfall in comparison to what you've seen over the course of the few days?
Yeah, it's interesting to see, because it really is since the sun has set here that we've seen a lot more of that motion. I don't know whether or not they move at night or in the day, or whether it's something that they do throughout the course of the day. But I would say that certainly that kind of a large tank column that we've seen just now there, I really haven't seen much of that over the past couple of days. So it certainly does appear to us here that there is a lot more motion going on towards that front line. And if you saw those vehicles, I mean, a lot of the vehicles just passed us, they were T-72 type. I don't know if they were T-72 or T-80 main battle tanks. Those are really powerful vehicles. And to see the Russians move that many of those in one column towards the front line is certainly something that, at least for us right now, is remarkable. We've seen sort of motion back and forth, a lot of infantry fighting vehicles that are sort of lighter armored vehicles, but main battle tanks that have a column that large move past is certainly not something that we've seen a lot of so far. So again, it's very difficult to tell whether or not that means that they're encountering more resistance than they thought, or whether or not this
it's a false assertion on the part of Putin, but that's what he's telling the people in Russia tonight, or this morning, Thursday morning in Russia. In a statement, President Biden says he denounces, quote, the unprovoked and unjustified attack on Ukraine, pledges the world will hold Russia accountable. President Biden says he will monitor the situation overnight and is scheduled to meet with G7 counterparts in the morning. The White House expected to announce more sanctions tomorrow, and we are supposed to hear from the president tomorrow, President Biden, to
And Vladimir, he's Hayden Panettiere's ex. Today, she shared this photo of them together in Ukraine. They had an on-again, off-again relationship. Dog. Oh, that. I watch The world is watching.
Yeah. Charter and who does not. Russia called the draft resolution unbalanced because it did not address Ukraine's alleged role in the situation. The NATO organization, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, has activated resources in response to the Russian invasion. First time that NATO's response force has ever been activated. Those forces have not been deployed, but they are on standby. It is not known how many of the force's 40,000 troops have been activated. Activation does not mean any forces will actually go into Ukraine, since it was not a member of the alliance. And the
right, of how he views the world. And while he has always certainly had a view that the dismantling of the Soviet Union was bad for Russia, there was less of a rationalized argument he would make. It was more of a, it was a megalomaniac. It was megalomaniac stuff, right? And megalomaniacs are not easy to reason with, and maybe impossible to reason with. And if he's unstable, and here's an unstable man with nuclear weapons, so it really, I think, complicates the response, if you will, by the Western alliance here.
Meet the Press airs Sunday morning at 10 a.m. right here on 11 Alive. On Twitter that he was selling 10% of his own Tesla holdings. It was a move that sent the automaker's shares sharply lower in the days that followed. Musk denies doing anything wrong and says his brother knew nothing of the Twitter post beforehand. He accuses the SEC of having the proverbial axe to grind.
For months, we've been working closely with the private sector to harden our cyber defenses sharpen our ability to respond to Russian cyber attacks as well.
President Joe Biden on Wednesday addressed possible cyber attacks by Russia against the U.S. The worry follows the ransomware attack that shut down Alpharetta-based Colonial Pipeline last year, a similar attack against meatpacking company JBS, and the SolarWinds hack in 2020 that compromised the data of federal agencies and about 100 private companies, according to the White House. Russia-based organizations have been linked to or accused of each attack.
I think it's probably unlikely that this sort of Ukraine crisis would lead to kind of a cyber conflict between the United States and Russia.
Jeff Barajikian with the University of Georgia's Department of International Affairs says there are two scenarios, though, where an attack could become more likely. The first is if Russian cyber attacks against Ukraine grow out of control and intentionally or accidentally seep in
back against the West and say stop.
Barajikian says Russia targeting critical infrastructure or crippling the U.S. economy is unlikely, as it could be viewed as an act of war. An attack would most likely go after targets similar to past attacks to expose vulnerabilities and demand attention.
Financial institutions, large corporations, government offices and services, those are the kinds of things that Russia's doing right now in Ukraine, and so we might expect them in the unlikely event that something happens directly in the United States.
Banking transaction system. What more can you tell us on that?
Well, our colleagues on the White House team have new reporting that President Biden is seriously considering whether to remove Russia from SWIFT. That is that high security networking system that connects so many financial institutions around the world. But so far, he has not made a final decision. One thing that administration officials have been clear on is that this is something that cannot be done easily or unilaterally by the United States. It needs to be done in conjunction, in sign-off with the European Union. That is something the administration is talking with them about, and it could be a very severe consequence.
They take shelter. She says communities are waiting in lines for hours trying to secure food and medicine.
An ATM, they run out of money, so people can get money just to buy the necessary things.
Amid the sense of fear and uncertainty overseas, Clem says she feels helpless to care for her loved ones.
I can't be with my family. And at this moment, I can't even fly to Ukraine because all the airports either are destroyed or closed.
It's heartbreaking. It's very difficult to, I think a lot of people still don't realize and understand what's going on because it feels like something surreal.
Lilia Maklichuk Sharma grew up in Ukraine, her home still close to her heart. She has relatives and friends living through the attack, and now she's aiming to bring more international attention and awareness to the conflict.
If that's not going to be stopped, we just give a prime example to any other countries to invade any other country, right? So where does it stop?
With Ukrainian officials reporting dozens killed as a result of the Russian invasion and more than 100 wounded so far, Clem and Maklichuk Sharma say the international community needs to step in and help to keep their home afloat.
Because everyone will be affected eventually by this conflict, not only Ukraine, and that's what the international...
Huh? Oh. You get a 10 cents off if you pay cash. Strange.